Hey guys, LanguageHacker here. We are currently in the midst of Roguestone, Heroes of Roguecraft, and basically I want to make a video to complain about it, because the meta doesn't feel very good. We had quite a lot of diversity, maybe 1 to 2 weeks ago, and there's still a pretty varying amount of decks that are viable, but at the highest level it's pretty much just Roguestone, and even at lower ranks it's still pretty heavily Roguestone. We haven't seen any changes announced yet, and I'm kind of hoping they come soon because it really feels yucky to play ladder right now. The comical thing is that when you see your opponent's class, half the time it's going to be Rogue. So like the mulligan doesn't even matter at that point. You're literally just trying to mulligan for Rogue, and then if it's not Rogue, you just figure out and deal with it after. Anyways, let's look at some stats so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about some changes I would like to see. Again, don't know when they're coming or if they're coming, but I do have some suggestions that I would like to see. Maybe they're wrong, but some of you guys might want to see what I have to say about it. So let's hop in. Now, for those who don't recognize this, this is hsreplay.net. This is a website I use and a lot of other people use to look at statistics. You can see what decks' win rates are at varying ranks. For competitive stuff, I generally look at only Legend, top 1000 Legend, but it's still important to talk about the meta at different levels and different ranks, because Legend is not the entire player base, and nerfs shouldn't be made just for people at Legend. Nerfs should be made for how people feel at all ranks. Anyways, I'm starting just to talk about Legend top 1000 for now. So you'll notice that here in tier 1, the decks are sorted here by win rate in the meta tab, and it looks like all the rogue decks are up here. The only other playable deck after that is Face Hunter. There's some other stuff that kind of wins, but then it really drops off. At high legend, nothing outside of Rogue is basically playable. I've tried making counter decks, like decks that specifically beat both Thief Rogue and Poison Rogue, and it doesn't really work. I made like a Control Warrior with like Vipers and stuff, and it was doing okay, but it still didn't feel quite consistent enough. And the problem with that deck is you lose a lot to other decks, because it's just building, even when the meta is just purely one deck, built or close to purely one deck, it just doesn't work to build a counter deck against it if you're losing too much of the time to other stuff, because the other popular decks do stomp that warrior that I was building. Yeah, and sometimes the rogue decks just scam wins too. Sometimes you don't draw Vipers, so it's not even the full counter deck, it's just a deck that's favored against it. But it's just ridiculous that, like, how high win rate this is, and this is just win rate. So this is not just this is not frequency. I mean, frequency will be affected by win rate at high level. I do have also the Vicious Syndicate Data Reaper report that came out today on the 13th. That's when this video is. They have some nice information here that basically show you the frequency of classes at different ranks. Now you'll see at top 1k Legend, 44% of decks are Rogue. That is absurd. The next highest is 17, which is Druid, because Druid has a good chance against it, and then it drops off pretty heavily from there. There are 10 classes in the game. 44% is I broken record. It's actually absurd. I don't know what other word to use, but this is a top 1k Legend where people really care. They're whatever tryharding. But let's look at the other ranks. Legend, 30% Rogue. Diamond, still 23% Rogue. All ranks, still 18.4%. At every single rank, Rogue is just hyper, terra, giga, whatever, mega popular. It's also not incredibly difficult to play. I'm not going to go into like super detailed stats on stuff, but that's useful for analysis. But basically, you just mulligan for the Panda, the double agent, and the Wild Panol, and you just start winning matchups. You have Wand Thief to generate your way out of situations. Reconnaissance can get you some memes. You have a bunch of burst damage with Wicked Stab, Smite, the interaction with Smite and Edwin. It's just the deck is too flexible, and it's cheating out too much mana and it's frustrating. And so I'm saying the deck. I'm talking mainly about Thief Rogue. Poison Rogue is just as annoying, if not more frustrating. I can actually beat Thief Rogue with decks. Poison Rogue is just incredibly frustrating gameplay pattern, and it feels way too overtuned. I'm going to be talking about what changes I want to see to specific cards that hopefully tune this down a little bit. And I'm sure the Hearthstone team has their eye on this, because stats like these are, again, quite absurd, for lack of a better word. But basically, this is what I mean by Rogue Stone. Here's a Rogue craft right now. It's, if you queue it up, there's a very, very high chance you're just against a Rogue, even if it says it's another class. And that doesn't make for a very great play experience. Variety is the spice of life, and there's not a lot of variety right now. Even with all the generation, it doesn't really help help the game feel kind of varying. It's just, there's a null on turn 2, you hate the game. They coin out a double agent, it's kind of annoying. It's just, it's too flexible. The deck can do too many things, the Thief Rogue. Poison Rogue is more limited in what it can do, but it does that one thing very consistently. And people started putting Wapon Nulls in Poison Rogue because it's just 0 mana 4/5. Yeah. Change this, please, Blizzard. Rogue is really frustrating to play against. In my opinion, Rogue has been frustrating to play against since Hearthstone's inception, but it seems particularly out of whack right now. All right, let's talk about what changes I want to see then, now that we've determined what the situation is. What are the problem cards? Scabs. This card is illegal. The Hearthstone team got rid of Vanish, because Vanish made for unfun play patterns. And this is literally a better Vanish. For 1 more mana, you get 8/4 worth of stats, and a hero power that's pretty good. The next card you play this turn costs 2 less. This card just needs to be changed. I don't know how. If you bump this, I'm scared that they're just going to bump this to 8 mana. That's not going to be enough. It's still going to be illegal at 8 mana. I want to see it at 9 mana, or I want to see maybe it changes to, I don't know, you sap half your opponent's board or 2 of your opponent's minions. The Vanish effect is too powerful. I don't care if they change the shadows. If the shadows are 2/2s or 1/2s, they could get rid of the shadows, and I think it's still too strong. It's just, it's way... In Thief Rogue, it would be fine if they got rid of the shadows or changed them, but in Poison Rogue is more of an issue, because it's an extra ice block, basically. You just don't have to worry about board, which is what the deck does anyways, but now the deck has an extra cloak because of this. And the hero power means that they don't have to efficiently, you know, set up a perfect 10-card combo or whatever. They can just do whatever they want with, like, Sleight of Hand, Guild Trader, and a couple of burn spells, which is really frustrating. Paired together with Cloak of Shadows, they just have 3 turns in a row where board doesn't matter. They can just cycle their deck. Even if you get rid of their weapon with Vipers, I'm putting Vipers in my deck. I'm losing games where I tempo out Wild Pawn Nulls, double agents, Vipers on curve. I've gotten rid of both weapons. I'm at 30 and I still die because they just cloak scabs. I redevelop. I can't set up lethal, and then they Guild Trader me from full health, which is just absolutely disgusting, and it's very frustrating. Which is why I think this needs to be changed, either to push the game back so you don't die on turn 8, push this to 9 mana, or change it so it doesn't sap everything. I think either of those would be reasonable changes. I don't particularly think the hero power is necessarily the issue. It's frustrating that all of this works together, but I think that having mana cheat like this can be okay. Having a prep a turn for a hero card is okay. I'm okay with that, I think. Could this be nerfed instead? Sure, maybe, but I don't know how you would nerf it. Changing it to cost 1 less, I'd rather just see the card get increased in mana or have the battle cry slightly changed. All right, next up, Cloak of Shadows. I hate this card, change it to 4 mana. That's probably okay. Limiting how much you can do while setting up these cloaks into scabs would probably help the gameplay quite a bit, because it just feels like they output too much damage with the weapons paired together with cheap poisons and then Cloak of Shadows, and then they either finish you off with a big weapon or just the burn plan that I talked about earlier with Guild Trader. But I think bumping this up to 4 mana would help. I don't think changing the effect really is that useful. I mean, I'm not even sure what you could really change it to. So I think bumping this to 4 mana would probably be reasonable. I don't think Double Agent is really a problem. I think having a Thief-type Rogue is just fine, and this would be a strong card. It is kind of like a 3-mana 6/6, but the fact that this is split up over 2 minions makes it much more palatable and manageable for decks, right? You can have, you know, smites, lunar eclipses, whatever. You can remove half the body and then just take 3 damage, and that's okay, and then you deal with it over time. Wild Panel. This needs to change. This is not okay. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can make it more expensive. You can make it 6 mana, you can make it 7 mana. I don't think they're going to bump it straight up to 7 mana. I think they might try it at 6 mana. It's still going to be really frustrating to play against. It'll just be slightly less annoying. So if they're changing a few cards, I'd rather they change Scabs substantially than they change this. If they bump this to 6 and then change Scabs by a substantial margin, I think that's fine. But if they don't touch Scabs, then maybe bump this up to 7. You could change this, maybe, the text on this that doesn't particularly look with Maestra, because if you actually have to spend mana, like, you know, play Swashbucklers, Wand Thieves to reduce this, instead of having Maestra just naturally discount this, and then having the tradables discounted as well, that might be a way to do that, but I'm not sure if their intention was to make it like that. I imagine they wanted it to synergize with Maestra, so removing that interaction altogether doesn't seem very nice, I guess, as a solution. So my guess is this gets bumped up to 6 mana. They could also reduce the stats on it. That's another consideration. Changing this like to 5/5/3/4 might be reasonable instead of a 6/4/5. I don't know how they'd want to change the stats versus mana cost, but I think this does need to be tuned. I don't think this needs to be killed. I think if enough changes to Cloak and Scabs are applied, you can still have a healthy Thief Rogue deck, and I think that's kind of what they should be doing. Other cards that I'd like to talk about that they're not going to change because they haven't until now. Secret Passage. Please kill this card. I know it's rotating, but just get it. Oh, it's not rotating. Wait, is Soulman's rotating? Chat, is this rotating? Regardless, I don't care if it's rotating. Can we please just delete this card? It is rotating. Okay, thank you. Well, rotation is happening soon, TM. So they're probably not going to do too much about this. I think this is an absolute major issue. I've complained about this every expansion since it's come out. It originally was replace your hand with 5 cards from your deck. This is just, I don't know how this is an acceptable card for Rogue. The strength of Rogue across all of Hearthstone's history has been tempo good at the cost of cards. And that's why we have cards like Prep, Shadow Step. You can do stuff with cheap mana, but at the cost of not having as many cards. And that just got thrown out the window at some point because we have Passage, Swindle. What else do we have? I think tradables are fine. I think that's healthy. I don't think that needs to be touched, but I guess Silverleaf Poison is kind of annoying, but I don't think that's an issue. This card is just, I don't think this card should exist. It's just, I don't like this. I either want this 2 mana or I want 3 cards. I want it nerfed more. This is as much as Scabs and Cloak is annoying, if this was tuned, the other cards wouldn't be a problem as much, because this just makes the entire game plan way more consistent. You don't have to worry about resources because, you know, you can just passage and refill whatever, and that's kind of annoying. Not every game has to be a resource battle where you have to manage everything perfectly and then outvalue your opponent, because that's not how the game should be. But I think this is just too strong and lets you play without thinking about resources. You can still have a game where you're aggressive or you're tempo oriented and have to, you know, not all in to lose against like a Holy Nova or something. I think that can still be reasonable without, you know, completely throwing caution to the wind and saying I'm just all inning every turn because I have passages. I don't think they're going to change this, but I would really like to see this tuned a bit more, even though it's rotating. There's a lot of other cards I don't like about Rogue, but I can say like whatever. Like Wand Thief is strong, but it's fine to have strong cards. It's just not fine to have all your cards be strong or illegal. I think that's more or less all I have problems with. Cloak, Scabs, Passage, and Null. I think other than that, I'm pretty happy. Like if those cards get changed, I think that's good. Now, I don't want to focus purely on Rogue, because while Rogue is at the forefront of our minds because it's everyone in the meta right now, there are still some changes I would like to see, because if the Rogue stuff gets changed, I think some other decks will pop up. Particularly, I didn't go into detail about this during the stats. I'll have links to those 2 pages below that I went over, the HS Replay and the Vicious Syndicate report. Paladin at all ranks is actually quite popular as well. At outside of top 1000 Legend, Paladin picks up in popularity at all the other ranks. And I think if Rogue gets removed a little bit, Paladin will pick up a little bit. I think Cariel could be tuned a little bit. I think it is a little bit strong at 7 mana. Other than that, I don't really care about the Paladin cards. Nothing seems too illegal. I think they've tuned everything else down, and that's fine. And the other change I would like to see is flow to 4 mana. Mozaki Mage feels very, very toxic to play against, and it's overshadowed a little bit because the Poison Rogues are driving it out of the meta. But it's unacceptable that you can die from hand on turn 6. And this is... If you have a nice cool meme deck where if the stars align, like an Exodia type deck, that's fine. You know what? 1 in 1,000 games, your opponent falls over on turn 6, and it's like, oh my god, I can't believe you have that. This happens like 1 in 10 games, and that's just frankly absurd. And more consistently, it happens on turn 7, 8, which is exactly what they were trying to stop by changing the combo decks, right? That's why they changed Warg Artificer. That's why they changed Garrett and Octobot, so that we don't die on turn 7 anymore to combo from hand. And yet that's still happening with play patterns in Poison Rogue and Mozaki Mage. So I think Flow has got to go. Is Flow also rotating? This is more of like for an information type thing, because regardless of whether or not it's rotating, it's incredibly frustrating to play against. It is rotating. And if the rogue changes do happen, that means this could pick up a little bit as well. So I would still like to see Flow. I would like to see Flow, Cariel. Cariel you can probably just bump up to 8 mana. I don't think changing it in any other way is really a big issue. I think a slight bump in mana should be fine for Cariel. And Candace Flow mana bump, Wild Paw Knoll mana bump if Cloak gets bumped and Scabs get changed. Those are the 5 cards I want to see changed. I don't think they've announced anything yet, so I'm assuming they have their eye on this. You know what? No, I have faith that they have their eyes on this, but I am hoping that they are going to make changes that are actually good. Anyways, this is a long video. I complained a lot about Rogue. The meta really sucks, and until changes come out, I'm not really sure what kind of stuff I'm going to be doing. I can try to make some meme decks. I've been trying to get out some competitive decks to play too, but everything is just overshadowed by Rogue right now, and it's very frustrating to try and tinker at Legend because everything you play against is Rogue. So I'll have to see what I'm going to come out with. If you have suggestions, be sure to drop them in the comments. Hope you guys enjoyed what I have to say. I imagine some Rogue mains won't be happy. I imagine some Mozaki mages won't be happy about what I have to say, but I think those are the changes that we need to get back to a healthy, diverse meta that we had 2 weeks ago. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, keep your eyes peeled for more videos. I'll catch you guys next time.